All right, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Cox from Waycross PD in Georgia. He has a total of 34 years experience in law enforcement, and wellness has been something that's been the center of his life and his career for a really long time. So I'm really excited to have him today. Welcome to the show, Chief
Well,
Cox. Thank you for being here.
thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So give us a little bit of background. You've been at your current agency, Waycross PD, for 32 years. You were at a previous agency for 2 years. Give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, so basically, I straight out of high school, I went into the Marine Corps,
Okay.
and I'm 17 years old. Got out in 1992 after my contract was up, and the original plan that I had was going to go to college, wanted to get me a history degree, and wanted to be a teacher, teach history, and that was the plan. And so I was living up in Tennessee. Uh, working at night at a prison, and going to college during the day. And after about 2 or 3 semesters in, I just kept having a calling to come back home. Um, where I grew up, um, and so I stopped with the college, made a trip home one week, put in an application, got hired here at the PD, and basically been here ever since.
I love that. And so this was something that you knew you always wanted to do, or like as far as you wanted to help people and you wanted to be in service of others. And at first it was you wanted to be a teacher, but then after that you knew that you wanted to be in law enforcement.
Yeah, and like I say, every time I would visit home and I would leave home, I would miss home, and there's always something that's sticking with me about investing in where you grew up and
Okay.
want to have an impact or leave your fingerprint, you know, um, where you grew up at, and so that just kept calling, kept pulling, and as far as the police department's concerned, I showed up on the right day at the right time. And matter of fact, when I walked in with my application in hand after I got it filled out, they actually that very morning had somebody turn in a resignation
Wow.
who was going to be going to another agency. And we had, I want to say, 64 sworn police officers at the time. And number 64 came available on the day that I popped up. So I'm very, thankful and I guess a little bit lucky.
Do you believe in fate? Do you feel
Oh,
like
I do.
do you feel like that was like fate, or do you feel like it was just a huge coincidence?
You know, I don't know. Strange enough, just probably about an hour ago, I was having lunch with somebody that I worked with years and years in law enforcement, and we was talking about, during my career, early in my career, I had a little, rough patch, and and so, and I told him, I said, for a period, I said I used to regret that first couple of years, but I told him, I said, but I don't. I said I don't regret any stretch of time frame that was bad, because you can look at that and then look at yourself now
Mm.
and say, maybe those errors, um, maybe me spinning my wheel during the time frame got me to where I'm at now. Because only when you're in trouble or making mistakes does it put you in a mindset of you know sometimes a reflection.
Hmm.
You got to make those hard choices. If you're going to stay in this business and you want to do what you want to do, then you're going to have to conduct yourself in a particular way. And so, and to a large degree, yeah, I do think things happen, for a reason.
Mm.
And um and one of the reasons I got moved back down this way, like I said, it was just a pure passion of of where you're growing up. And and if it wasn't for policing in my hometown, I don't know I would do the same job with the passion if I was somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it was, I kind of remember like when I was worked in the detectives division, and simple case of illegal dumping and things like that. Well, man, I had cameras up all over the place. trying to catch these people. And somebody made a statement to me one day and said, "Man, you're taking this a little bit too serious, ain't you?" I said, "No, I ain't taking it too serious." I said, "Same place where they're backing up and they're throwing out all this trash and they're doing all that." I said, "That's where I used to play as a kid."
Mm,
And and I take pride of where I live, take pride of where I grew up and all that. And so being in my hometown, I think it that passion is there. And I don't know if I'd have the same passion if I was working in another town or another county or something like that. So
yeah,
but yeah, I'm very much into believing that sometimes fate does intervene.
I am too. And I love that you said that you maybe made mistakes or had some hard times in your life or in your career, and you look back on it and you're and I'll relate this to me because I have had those moments too, right? Where I look back and I think in the moment when you're making mistakes or maybe not doing the best in life or in your career, in that moment there's almost like for me like shame or down on myself. But now when I look back too on those times, like the hardest times in my life were my biggest learning opportunities, and
Or
in a way I'm really grateful for those things. And I agree with you. I think that a lot of the things that we go through drive our passion and our why for why we do these things and why we care so much about these things. And in my life, I don't think that I would care so much about wellness and what I do today and having these conversations that I get to do. Like, I'm so lucky to be able to have conversations with individuals like yourself. I
Mhm.
don't think I would have that passion if I didn't go through hard things in my life. If I
Right.
didn't know the opposite of those things, if you hadn't grown up in that community and seen that that trash was dumped where you used to play, yeah, maybe you wouldn't have that same passion. That other person's like you're taking it too seriously. They didn't have that same experience as you. So you're like, yeah, like this is driving my why. And so I think that we have to in some ways have gratitude for the things that we've gone through in our lives, and it almost becomes our superpower. All the struggles, all the hard times become our superpower to be able to make positive change.
Yeah, it shapes us
Hmm.
on who we ultimately become. And so,
Yeah.
but yeah, the bad stuff, you know, you don't dwell on it, recognize it was there, but when it was all said and done, did it make you a better person? Did it put you in a better position? And that's the way I look at it anyhow.
Yeah, and I think that's our best hope is that everything that we go through, there is an opportunity in that. And sometimes we have to dig really deep. Like there's
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of things that are really, really hard, and it's hard to see the learning lesson or the growth opportunity in some of the hardest things that we go through. But I think that's the hope is that we can find a way to move forward in a more positive way. One of the things that you said, and I mentioned this in your intro, is that health and wellness has been something that's always been important to you. How have you been able to take care of yourself over the last 34 years in an extremely stressful career, especially as you start to rise through the ranks and, have more administrative stress?
Yeah. Well, originally it was more of so in the Marine Corps, extremely good shape. But that first couple of years after Marine Corps, I mean, I probably put on probably 50 pounds. And it was just a realization one day. I mean, it comes on so slowly, but it was, I finally realized one day, well, I'm not doing the things that I did during that 4 years and stuff. And so I started breaking back into it, trying to do something about it. But um, probably when I was earlier, it was really driven to a degree, I think, by ego. And what I mean by that is, I mean, it was like every day was like a powerlifting competition here with the officers that I worked with.
Mhm.
I mean, our goal was to get in the gym just to see, who could be the strongest. And just by doing that, it kind of evolved where we would get in little teams and we would actually go to other cities if there was some sort of like a powerlifting contest or something like that with public safety going on, well, we'd go and we'd enter and we compete. But over time, it kind of evolved for me, and I didn't think that that was necessarily the best way. But it really started as a team effort. I remember in the around 94, 95 was the first time you started seeing, from what I remember, you started seeing these like 12-week transformation programs that, if you're familiar with Bill Phillips, I want to say he may have been the first one that I recall. And so several of us here at the department, we would do stuff like that, have the beginning, have the end. And I remember we'd go out, we'd be working the night shift, and everybody was assigned a different fitness magazine to purchase. And so one person would buy Muscle and Fitness, one person would buy Flex, another person would buy whatever. And so there's like 5 or 6 different versions come out. We would buy, each one would be assigned one to buy. And then after we read it, everybody would rotate their magazines. And so we were really into it, and it was real team driven at that point. And I got to a point where when I got assigned to the SWAT team and then made SWAT team commander, I really believed in the team aspect again. And as a team, we would start going and competing in always Marine Corps for some reason, but the Marine Corps half marathon. We would, as a team, we would go down to Jacksonville, Florida, and would participate in that every year. And then it expanded to, as a team, we would go up to Columbia, South Carolina, where they were having what they call a mud run, Marine Corps mud run. It takes about 2.5 hours to get that. But so it kind of shifted from real ego driven to kind of, see how strong you are, and really using it as like a team building type thing. Everybody experiencing together, and it just, over time, it evolved. And I was always in a book, reading about this, reading about that, always trying to educate myself on it. And I become around 2003, 2004, health and wellness certification through the state of Georgia, and and always trying to spread that knowledge and get people on board here at the police department. But I just always, over time, I always recognized that that my day was always better with it.
Yeah.
The day was always better when I got up, whatever type of routine I was going to be doing. That, and I don't know if you would call it an addiction or what, but I always tell people everybody's got to have their, cup of coffee in the morning. Well, I have to go and whatever my routine is for that day, as far as exercise is, I have to have it. And if I don't, I do not feel like I'm the best the rest of the day. I mean, it kind of sets the pace for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm one of them. I love 4 o'clock in the morning rolls around, I'm up and prepping for my workout. And but as you get older in life, you're sometimes, when it comes to that, your whys change, and so it's been part of my life, or been part of me my whole career. But my why has changed over time as far as health and wellness. And so, you start getting your blood work done and that sort of thing. And you see those numbers all out of whack. So you shift gears and you start addressing that. And so, but now it's nothing about trying to, lift as most as I can lift, and that, kind of thing. I mean, it's really has evolved to more of an overall wellness type mindset, mind and body. And when I was speaking, there was something that when I was speaking about that 12-week challenge back in mid-90s that Bill Phillips did. They end up doing a documentary on it, and I had a copy of it, and I watched it. And there was actually one of the winners for the age class happened to be a police officer. out of somewhere in upstate New York. And I remember him, and this has always stuck with me. And like I said, it's probably been 30 years back. But he made a statement, and the statement was, he said, "Your body is a gift from God. How you treat your body is a gift back to God."
Mm,
And so that's always something that's kind of stuck with me and tried to has always been, right there with me. It's something I lean on a lot also.
yeah. Thank you for sharing. I kind of laughed when you said at first it was ego because I was talking to this department and they're all getting younger or I'm getting older or a combination of the two. But they were young, I'll say young kids, but they were like maybe in their 20, like early 20s. And I was asking that question about the why. And I agree with you. I think our whys are going to change throughout our lives and our careers. And, an officer who is maybe brand new, who doesn't have a family yet, and they're just trying to like learn the ropes and they're trying to prove themselves, like maybe their why is different, and then maybe once you have a family, your why becomes more, around family and being there as long as possible and being able to run around with your kids. And then when you're older, maybe it's, more longevity and retirement. So I think
Yep.
you're exactly right that why's change. But I laughed because I remembered this. I was asking that question of like, why is wellness important for you guys? And one of the guys raised his hand and he's like, maybe this is ego driven, or, self-centered or whatever. He's like, I want my wife to be attracted to me. He's like, I just want to look really good so my wife is attracted to me. And I was like, that is a great reason to get up in the morning and do your thing. Like, whatever lights your fire, whatever is that thing where you're like, man, like, I just really want to be the best version of myself
Mhm.
for whatever, my family, my team, my community, whatever that is. And I'm like, if that's what gets you out of bed to take care of yourself, I'm for it, And so I just thought it was really funny because it's like, I just want my wife to think I'm hot, and like that's
Hey,
about it. Um,
well, and like I said, he's getting in shape for that reason or whatever. But
yeah,
if that's his one purpose, look at all the side benefits that come along with it.
100%.
It's just
Yeah.
like awesome. But
Well, and I like the idea of also having accountability like partners and having that team mentality. I almost thought about, and I know that this is aging myself, but did you ever watch the movie? It was the animated movie Finding Nemo. Did you ever see this?
I'm
Okay.
familiar with it, but I've never watched it.
So
But
there's this like famous scene in there where they're like jumping out and they're like, "Do you have your exit buddy?" And they like kind of pair up to like jump out into the current. And that's what I'm thinking about is like, do you have that person that can be like your accountability buddy? Can you have that person that's going to be there with you through those things? Because it is hard to self-motivate. And so I really like that strategy of within an organization or within your life, can you find people who you can team up with? Because especially in the beginning, I was far more effective if I knew someone was counting on me. And so if I had a personal trainer and he's waiting for me at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm more likely to get up and go
yeah.
because I know that he's there than to go on my own. So for those who maybe find it hard to self-motivate, obviously you're a different category. You're super self-motivated, but I know a lot of people aren't. How can you have those people that are going to hold you accountable? How can you have those people who are going to do it with you?
Well, the strange thing, and yesterday was the first day we actually um, did this. We have been trying to incorporate some health and wellness incentives here at the department,
Yeah.
just to kind of make it, easier for them, a little bit more simpler. I don't know whether you call it, try to push them into that realm or motivate them. Small things when you're off duty, if you want to, drive your patrol car to the gym, that's authorized. Um, and like I said, we've just started this, but we pay them 2 hours a week now. So if they go to the gym, they can claim that on their time card. But yesterday we tried something totally different, and this come about from another employee. You look at him, you think he's in great shape, but we were talking, and he was talking about his blood pressure and da 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 da, this, that, and the other. I cannot figure it out. And he was given the numbers, and the numbers was, way. And so we had a long conversation, but I sent out a calendar invite and to the whole department. I said, if anybody wants to meet me at 3 o'clock, we're going to be at the Trembling Earth. Name of the complex is Trembling Earth Complex. Um, if you want to come out, and train with us. And I think there was probably 7 or 8 that had signed up to come, and then some got stuck in court. But and so the one that had the blood pressure issues, he showed up, and I never forget this young lady yesterday. She told me, and she said, "Chief, I sure am glad that you're doing this." She said, "Because I need some accountability."
Yeah.
And
I
she
love that.
said, she said, I know as soon as I hit yes on that invite um, to come and work out, I knew I was pretty much going to have to. But after we finished, and I think it was like an hour and 10 minute um, kind of mixed workout.
Mhm.
She she was talking about how good she felt, da 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 da, and so we've already planned another session for next Wednesday,
I
and
love that.
so but we which I think leadership, your staff, and everything. I think it's real important to set the I don't know, would it be set the example, or I really don't know how to put it, but um, I think the importance can be emphasized on health and wellness if they see people with the longevity, with the years of experience
I
out there, walking the walk, so to speak. It's one thing to have it in policy, saying you will pass this physical every year and you are to maintain general. But I think it means a little bit more if they actually seeing the people who wrote the policy actually out there doing it. And it's even I use it as a challenge for myself also, because I know I've got somebody behind me, you know, 25 years younger than me, 30 years younger than me. And I use that as a challenge. I promise you, I try to beat them.
I know,
And
because you're trying to beat out the young
yeah,
kids.
and I do. I mean, and I mean that's very, very, very. Even in like when I said we'd go down, we do half marathons as a team. I always tried to be up front, and a lot of that was just to challenge myself. I don't know. I wouldn't call myself a sore loser, but I just love the competition aspect of it and
I
stuff.
I think that we can all agree that I'm going to put this in a different context. Let's say someone comes up to you and they're trying to give you financial advice and they're in mountains of debt. Are you going to listen to that person if they're like, hey, do this? Or you're like, why would I listen to you if you're in a bunch of debt? And I think that we can, like, when we can logically say this, okay, if someone is saying, hey, you should take care of your physical fitness, but they're not in shape and they don't take care of their physical fitness, are people going to be more likely to then do it or less likely to then do it? And so I think that to your point, people are looking at leadership and they're looking for how to act, how to be, what to do. And if you're saying, hey, like, I want you to work out, I want you to focus on your fitness, but you're not willing to do that for yourself, I do think
Right.
that people kind of look at it and they're like, okay, well, if Chief's not doing it, why am I
Yeah, I
gonna?
mean, they see their lieutenant doing it, or they see their
Yeah.
captain doing it. They see the major do it. They see the chief do it. I think it gives your policy first of all, and but it portrays a little bit of credibility
Right.
from the person that that it's coming from. It's
Yeah.
like one of the guys I used to listen to years and years back. Somebody I used to follow and read his books and stuff, and then they got into podcasts and that sort of thing. It's like going to a 350-pound doctor and he tells you need to lose weight and here's how you need to do it.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, is there any credibility to what he's saying? I mean, why ain't he applying these same rules to himself?
Exactly.
But anyway, who knows?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I did want to bring up, and you kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I wanted to circle back to this, is you had told me that leadership means that remembering that ranks bring more responsibility and not privilege. And so I wanted to talk about this a little bit. As you rise through the ranks, what responsibility do you think you have as a leader to set that example? And how do you kind of remember where you came from and still have the ability? Because you had talked to me about like remembering your foundation and still being prepared to do certain aspects of the job, even when you're in a leadership position. Can we talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, well, and I don't know if this come from, from when I was in the Marine Corps, it was always the verse, every Marine is a basic rifleman.
Mm,
And I kind of brought that over into, in my police way of thinking that every one of us, when it's all said and done, we're a basic patrolman before anything else. I know we have our responsibilities. I know how I have my roles and responsibility, as a police chief, and my major has his roles and responsibility with his position, so forth and so on. But I think our foundation um, should is always that patrol officer, and those skills that patrol officer has. I think we should never let them, you know, uh, lapse. Several years ago, whenever I got, I was in a supervisory position. Um, I got moved down to a detective's office, and one of the first things we did, we went and was doing a search warrant for somebody, and I started putting a little plan together. One of them come and said, "Yeah, we don't do none of that. That's we rely on patrol or SWAT and da 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 da." And that kind of caught me off guard a little bit. I'm like, "What you mean you don't do none of that?" Yeah, we ain't done none of that. And it's because they done got comfortable in their position, and there was several things I thought were lacking with that comment, and so we started training. We started training with them about doing search warrants and da 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 da. Because when it's all said and done, every single one of us, we're still police officers, no matter what our role is, and we got to keep that basic foundation there. I mean, just because you get promoted, does that mean tactics go out the window? No, absolutely not.
mm,
Just because you get promoted, does that mean that you know, you've lost all ability to sprint 30 or 40 or 50 yards after somebody? No, you've
yeah.
always got to, kind of be prepared. And that's just as a mindset, I've kind of always had. And I don't know if that, really was in, installed in me, um, during my time in the Marine Corps or not, because that had a great, positive effect on my life. But I think that just carried over um, into law enforcement, and um, and I believe sometimes people can get promoted and they forget the emotions that the patrolmen are going through, what they're experiencing on the street. Everything gets turned into reading it on a report.
Yeah.
And reading it on the report ain't the same thing as getting out there and experiencing it from time to time. And you have to put yourself, in their shoes. And but it all goes back to, look, that's our foundation. Being a patrol officer is our foundation. And if any of that crumbles away, I just don't think you're whole. You
Yeah.
know, I just don't think he holds. So you always got to stay in that field to a degree. Like I say, stay on top of training. Those tactics never go away. You got to continue, evolving. And what does evolving look like? Still maintaining those skills and advancing in whatever position, or, like, me, as chief, you never quit learning. You never quit evolving. There's always a new obstacle around the corner that you're going to have to you have to deal with. But that foundation has to stay intact, and because at the core, that's who we are. So
And I appreciate you saying like some really tactical things where you're like, hey, like you should still be able to run. You should still be able to do these certain skills that are going to keep you current and keep you safe. I had someone tell me recently, they said that in the academy, like one of their reasons why they were able to stay fit their whole career was because there was a video that was played in the academy that there was an officer who wasn't able to run. And they were essentially overtaken. And I think she said that they had lost their life. And so it was kind of this learning moment of like, hey, like wellness is safety. You know, you should be able to do these things to keep
Oh yeah.
yourself and everyone else safe. But it's these tactical things where, like, okay, like I think sometimes we have these conversations like, yes, wellness is important. But when you can break it down and say it's important because you have to be able to do this, you have to be able to do that. And in order to do those things, you have to take care of yourself. And that is what's going to keep you safe. And that wellness equals safety. I think people can start to get more on board with the why when they understand how it specifically relates to the functions of their career. So I appreciate you saying like a few of those things in there.
And train for what you when it comes to your fitness, train for what's more likely. Are you more likely to go out and chase somebody on foot for 5 miles? No. Are you more likely to sprint after somebody 30, 40, 50 yards? Yes.
Yeah.
So our training yesterday was like I say an hour and 10 minutes, but probably 8 minutes of it was like just it was all out, and
Mhm.
we kind of build up to it, but that's how it ended. And but like the sprints and the hit type stuff and all that, that's more likely than what we're going to be dealing with. The anaerobic, out of breath, and I can't go not the long sustained stuff. So
Yeah.
even though that's important, I mean I do a lot of that, but we can't forget think about when it comes to physical fitness, what are we dealing with out here? It's struggling with somebody for 30, 40 seconds,
Yeah.
you know, or it's chasing, somebody for 30, 40 seconds and train yourself for that.
Yeah. How do you keep people motivated and how do you keep morale, especially right now? We know right now is a hard time. There's a lot of media influence, whether that's news or social media. How do you keep people motivated and pushing forward for the same mission with the external pressure?
Yeah. Well, it's like, and I hear them talking, all the time. They'll see something on social media here locally, and it's, a criticism, of the police department somehow. And it's like, and I always tell them, I say, look, I said, the facts, the circumstances. This person who was posting as anonymous, I said, they're doing that for a reason.
Mm.
They don't know the facts. The facts are on our side, whatever circumstance, the facts are on our side. You know that. You know the type of person you are, and they don't. I said, they have no idea, about you, whatsoever. But kind of tell them to, you got to learn whether you kind of make it a habit
Mm.
of if you want to give yourself a little bit of social media time. I mean, just be selective with it,
Yeah.
and some way you got to learn to block out the noise. But I think the best way to block out the noise is you know I mean, lean on your peers a little bit if you got to talk about it or talk about what's going on. But I tell them, I said, if if there is something going on and there is some sort of public relation struggle, I said, under, understand. I said, that's my job. We'll come out. We'll do whatever we need to do at that point. But but block it out. I mean, it's all negativity. Try to create a habit.
Yeah.
Um, Tell yourself, I'm not going to do the doom scroll on Facebook or whatever social media platform it is, because then people don't know you, and let's lean on one another inside the department, and but because of somehow or with the how law enforcement can sometimes be portrayed through different media outlets or whatever. You know, 99% of the people are totally behind you.
Mm.
It just so happens that 99% are behind you. A lot of people ain't vocal. I mean, they're out living their life and da 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 da. And but it's that 1%, and they got to understand there is a grievance community. I mean, there's people grievance is their business, and so they kind of put a lot of negativity um, out there. But with that going on out there, what we emphasize here in the department, we try to create an environment where people want to come to work. I remember years back they used to talk about when they did little surveys, and maybe you've heard of some of these when they did little surveys of police officers about the stressors. They would always say, the administration. That's their number one stressor.
Yeah.
Well, your number one stressor should be being out there on the street, keeping yourself, um, safe, using good tactics. Um, there's where your stressor should lay. It shouldn't be with the administration. And so we really try to create an environment here where everybody feels like they're respected. And matter of fact, we have a little acronym that we go by to guide. And as you go through that acronym, one of them is mentioned. What acronym is pride,
Yeah.
and um, it says respect for our community, but it doesn't stop there. It says respect for our community and your fellow officer, and your fellow coworker. And so we demand respect um, amongst one another um, uh, also.
Can
And
you
if
can you
if
go
there's
through the whole thing as well when you're done? I want to hear all of them for pride, but I want to hear respect, but I want to hear all of them too after if you can go through them.
yeah, anyway, pride is P, professionalism, R for respect, not only for the community that we serve, but also amongst one another. Um, I for integrity, D for determination, and E for excellence.
Thank you.
And so that's just like a little, acronym that, we have in our strategic plan and that we post around the department and always try to, you know, remind that it's almost like, here's our guide right here.
Mm.
If we can do this, we're going to be okay. And either one of those I can speak on, but it's like, professionalism. I said professionalism almost like covers everything. As long as you're a professional, everything's going to be fine. Okay, as long as you carry out your duties in a professional manner, everything is going to be fine. And so, but yeah, that's pretty much
Thank
a
you.
little something that's like a little guidepost for us.
Well, the thing that I like the most about everything that you just said is there are so many things that we cannot control. And what people say about us or how people think, I can't control that. And I've had this in my personal life too. I've definitely had people write things on social media, because I'm, active on our platforms and on LinkedIn and all the things. And I've definitely had people who have said things, or maybe people who don't know me, but have a certain opinion of whatever, and it's hard because I think we all, especially if you really are trying to do a good job, we all want to be liked. I don't think that there's anyone I've ever met who's like, yeah, I just really want to be disliked or I really want
Yeah,
people to say negative things about me. But I really like what you said about one, negativity is going to be louder than positivity sometimes. And two, we can't control those things, but what we can control is our actions and the way we show up. And
oh yeah,
as long as we are conducting ourselves in a way that's positive, kind, respectful, all the things that you listed, with pride, professional, respectful, having integrity. What was the D for? Determination.
oh yeah, determination. Yeah,
Determination, I think that that's important because sometimes it's hard to keep going, but to have the determination and excellence, try to conduct yourself in the best possible way that you can. And as long as you know that you have the right intentions, that you're doing a good job or the best job that you can, I think it helps to kind of drown out the noise, and you kind of have to do that. Like I've definitely had times where it was hard for me to do that, but I've really tried to work on that for my own personal sanity. And then also, I love that you said like try to limit the doom scrolling. I think when you're home, how can you create an environment that is healthy where you're not turning on those things that are going to bring it back to the forefront, right? Like how can we like not look at the comments? How can we not look at the news? How can we not doom scroll? How can we be a human outside of it with positive things around us, because there's a lot of things that are going to weigh heavy. So thank you for kind of reminding everyone that hey, like as long as we're doing a good job, you can't control all the stuff, and we just kind of have to drown out the noise.
Yeah, let them be them and you be you and
Yeah,
move forward.
100%. My final question for you, and then I'll let you kind of take the floor if I missed anything, but um, what words of wisdom would you share with the younger generation? If you could go back in time to your younger self with all the knowledge that you have now, what words of wisdom would you share? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier.
Well, I've worked with quite a few bit of people that I got to see retire that I spent a lot of time with down here at the police department, and I never heard not the first one ever say, "I wish I'd spent more time at work." Every single one of them, to a degree, said, "Man, I wish I hadn't spent so much time at work. I wish I'd have found a better balance." And so it, earlier in your career, if you can go ahead and I understand that as soon as you get in it, you love the business, and I think it's great that you want to. When you're off, you're down here at the department. There's nothing negative, about that's good that they got that drive. But over time, even with myself, I've always kind of understood as long as I have more of a balance in my life, like when I'm off, um, you know, I've always got the phone on me, and so the position's always going to be calling.
Yeah.
But but when you can create that special time away from the department, whether you call it family time or whatever, make sure that you've got that balance there. And as far as getting off work, and you may be familiar with a book. There was a book out several years ago. It talked about the golden chair,
Yeah, I have heard.
and I can't remember, but I remember the overall mindset about it. He said, you get off work, you burn out, you go home, and you hit that chair, and you're done. And so now I think it's easy to turn in. You go home, you hit that chair, and you grab your phone, and you go on social media, and you see all this negativity. I mean, there's almost you see one bad thing, and then the algorithm kicks in, and same thing over and over and over and over and over again. But try to find some sort of productivity outside of this job. I mean, like for myself, I mean, I paint. I get home, I go into my little art studio, and I start painting. And um, by taking that on, I think it made me even better here
Mm.
at work instead of just 24/7, police department, police department, police department. And I say that not to be selfish towards the police department, but what I mean is when you have that balance, I think it creates better performance, when you are here at work.
Yeah.
You there's something to be said, about, you're heading for danger if you can't, learn that, how to deal with these stressors and, get things off your mind. So, but a lot of people, that's, like I said, health and wellness, the exercise, painting, whatever that may be.
Mm.
But any young person, I would say, look, go ahead and try to establish some sort of balance. Police department ain't going anywhere. We're going to be here, and by doing that, I think you become a better officer and better work performance.
Thank you. And I appreciate you sharing a little bit about what you do. And I think that we forget that wellness is vast and there's so many things that you can do that are going to give you that time that you need for you. And I've talked to other chiefs who have said other things like I like to woodwork. I had someone say like I like knitting. Whatever that disconnect is for you so that you can feel refreshed, you can have longevity, because burnout is real. We have to
Yeah.
have moments of rest and reset. And I do agree with you that I think when you have that, when you have those moments of being who you are, not what you do all the time, and having those moments of um, clarity and just decompression, it allows you to come back rejuvenated. It allows you to come back with more motivation. And I think it also gives us some perspective. Sometimes it's like, have you ever done that where you've like stared at a word problem for like an hour and you cannot figure out what the word is, and then you leave and you do something for 10, 15 minutes and you come back and all of a sudden it clicks? I think that we need those moments to just remove ourselves from some of the stress to be able to have that clarity. And some of my biggest regrets in my life are the same that you described earlier. Is I wish that I would have spent more time with my family, people who are not here anymore, who I will never, ever get time back with. And I'm going to get emotional. I actually was just texting my cousin this morning about it, and I was like, man, I really miss our grandma. She's been gone for a couple of years now, and I just really miss her. And there were opportunities that I could have spent more time, and instead I was fully focused on my career because I thought that that was everything. And now that she's gone, I realize that I'm never going to get that time back. And everything in my career would have been okay. We would have
Yeah.
ended up right where we are today if I would have done both. And so I really appreciate you saying that. I can really relate to that. And I do agree with you. I think it's so important to prioritize things in our lives that are important to us and not forget that.
Yeah. And it's like the job is going to call on us enough.
Hmm.
Okay. I mean, the number of times, go out to, enjoy a movie with my daughters, and my wife. And what happens halfway through it, I get paged out. The number of officers who never get to enjoy a Christmas parade, go trick or treating, or anything like that. Why? Because it's during those times they're serving the city. And so you've got to, but you've got to drill out that time and make sure it's that special time for you and it's not work related. And I do not mean that to sound negative, because there's a part of me when I see the young guys and girls down here on their off time hanging out at the apartment, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel motivated that they're loving it and they got the passion for what they're doing. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, so, slow down a little bit. You're going to burn yourself out.
Yeah.
Go ahead and find some sort of balance in your life away from police work, and then come back to police work whole,
Yeah.
refreshed. And so, but anyway, who knows?
Well, thank you. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on here and spending an hour with me and sharing your insights and your words of wisdom. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're more than welcome, man. Thank you.